Welcome. Please join us for a conversation on training in the modern slavery space with Dr. Stephen Morse and Sarah Morse of Unchained. So all parties seem agreed that training is a critical part of any action plan to address the risk of modern slavery in the supply chain. But there seems to be some difference in thought as to the timing and the audience. When would you ideally run a training session, and for whom?
Sure, that's a great question. So we would start inside out. So start with the internal organization, start from the top, start with the board, the executive, and all the key stakeholders, and then move that information flow through to the entire staff. That way, you can actually get the entire company on board with this issue. Given the complexities of the issue, we need to make sure that everyone is on board and they know what they're talking about, that it becomes part of the DNA of the organization. From there, you can actually start thinking about how or what needs to be communicated externally to suppliers, to the media, even to the government, to start thinking about what we as an organisation stand for and what we're wanting to communicate. So start in and then move out.
I think also too, in terms of timing, people often think that they need to be passionate or they need to understand the issue first before they're going to invest in the training. But what we're here to do is to actually spark that curiosity. So to get us in before you're even interested, before you're even passionate about it, to actually spark the curiosity and highlight the need so that then the executive do understand the need and can spread that out throughout their organisation.
We often hear the words hidden and invisible to describe modern slavery. For your training, how do you bring that issue into the light for your audience, and how do you give them the means to contextualize it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think in our circles, in the modern slavery circles, we talk about hidden in plain sight. So it's hidden, but not really. If it only just takes a small scratch on the surface, and we're going to discover slaves in our supply chains. So it's really looking at the key risk areas and identifying where those hidden people are actually very, very visible. And in terms of our training, we have a number of tools that we use. So one of them is to identify our own personal slavery footprint. So just as you're able to do your carbon footprint, and companies are working hard to offset their own carbon footprint, it's now possible to work out our individual slavery footprints as well. And I think that's a really useful tool to know the goods and services that we use every day, how many slaves are attached. And so for me, for example, with everything that I've seen and everything that I know, I still have 37 slaves working for me. And That's a staggering statistic. So when we bring it back down and help people understand the implications of their own choices and then relate that back to their business, that's a really useful way of helping people to see those people who are actually hidden in plain sight.
Brilliant. So Stephen, you refer to your authentic insights as part of your training and the stories and reflections that you share. I remember at the Department of Home Affairs Conference on Modern Slavery, one of the panelists mentioned, in referring to the audit of their supply chain, that their stakeholder groups gave greater credibility, greater weight to the audit when it was conducted by external auditors versus internal auditors. No matter the capability of the internal team. Do you find that this has correlation with respect to training? Do you find that people give more credibility to an external trainer versus an internal trainer?
I think by bringing in an external trainer, the company executive are communicating that we're doing something serious here, rather than trying to sort of do something internally. So the external trainer can bring the expertise, the insights, and also the access. So at Unchained, we have authentic insights into modern slavery and the stories, but also we have access to a global network of social enterprises and groups that are working to fight this issue. By bringing in the external people, you can also then start pinpointing the leadership, who's going to actually take ownership of this issue and build the capacity within the organisation, because you have that distance with the external provider to come in and actually facilitate the conversation rather than trying to do something that's internally, which may cause tensions or frictions or whatever. So the external provider has that social distance to sort of elicit the responses and help people to be on the same page within the organisation.
And sometimes it's about knowing which questions to ask as well, which an internal person may not have the authority to ask those questions. We find that coming in from the outside, it sort of gives us more permission to ask the tricky questions and then walk away and allow people to discuss it without creating sort of division within their own group. And we really believe in leading beyond compliance. So not just about ticking boxes to be compliant with the new law, but actually to lead in your industry group beyond compliance. And that's what we bring into the room.
These are your reflections and your stories as people who work in the anti-slavery space. Do you ever get pushback from audience members with respect to your training, viewing it more as advocacy versus authentic insights made to make them more aware of the issue just generally?
Yes, definitely. I mean, my personal experience is working in a safe house for survivors of human trafficking into the sex industry. And that story in itself can be very confronting for people. So what we work really hard to do here at Unchained is to approach this as educators and trainers. You know, that we have information that can open a window into a world that other people might know little about. And let's just have a conversation about it. Because we found that when we start talking with that sort of that passion and that advocacy, people do. They feel shame, they feel guilt, and they want to shut down and run away. And oftentimes they'll express anger as a result of those feelings as well. So, but we really just want to take away that shame, acknowledge that pretty much all of us have slaves at some point in our supply chains, both as personally as consumers and as corporate businesses. So let's just take the shame away and have a conversation and start there. And I think that that's really the place that we want to come from, is in education and training, to actually just open the door to understand this world a little bit more.
Brilliant. Well, Steve and Sarah, thank you so much for this conversation. And hopefully it will be the start of more conversations. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.